Morning, everybody. Thank you for tuning into June's Coffee Break with the Hub. This month, we are going to be discussing harnessing extension's potential. Before we get going, a few housekeeping items. An archive of this webinar will be posted to the Funding Resource Hub's webpage under the archive section. That's where you can find this webinar as well as every other recorded presentation that has taken place since we launched. And next month, Coffee Break is going to have the same format as this one. It's going to be a recorded webinar posted to the website the morning of July 6th, which is the first Thursday in July. And that Coffee Break is going to talk about how to optimize GRC and Cost Pivot when you're looking for funding, particularly how to use the profile section of Cost Pivot to really help you find collaborators for your project. All right, let's dive into today's topic. The agenda for today's discussion will focus on identifying potential funding opportunities for extension programming and spotlighting some possible collaborations between our divisions. We will then discuss federal funding trends in the light of a new administration and touch briefly on grant funding opportunities and where there's really an emphasis on these opportunities. And finally, we'll discuss tools you can use to build your team to go after these cross-disciplinary grants. So first, let's talk about what sets UW Extension apart. We are a state-controlled institution of higher education, a land-grant university, a 501c3, and can qualify as a local government entity, which really qualifies us for a wide range of funding opportunities. Realistically, there's not a whole lot out there that we aren't eligible for. We have an established track record. We've been around for over 100 years. Not a lot of institutions and agencies can claim that. And our programming can have local, regional, statewide, nationwide, and even international impact. And we have an experienced grant management team that is well-versed in everything from generally accepted accounting practices to uniform guidance. Why is that important? Well, because one misstep can have a big impact on our faculty and staff and the institution as a whole. The last thing the team at OES wants is to be another one of these headlines, because when something like this happens, it can disqualify you for future funding. Let's dive a little into our current funding landscape. Unlike big research institutions like Madison, we have a pretty broad range of sponsors. Madison, for example, gets the vast majority of its extramural funding from NSF, which is the National Science Foundation, and NIH, which is the National Institution for Health. Due to the nature of our programs, we get most of our funding as applied research opportunities or direct service grants. It's probably obvious, but most of our extramural funding comes from USDA, and in particular, that's where our Smith-Lever funds are located. And that's followed then by the EPA and Wisconsin DNR. But what else is out there? Have you ever gone to grants.gov to find funding? I hope not, because we subscribe to 2 wonderful databases that can help you narrow down and navigate your search. But if you have probably noticed that there were 26 different agencies with competitive grant opportunities. Here are logos for just a few of them. Yeah, you can just look at the name of the federal agency and know that they're not going to have any opportunities for you. Department for Defense, as an example. We don't engage in military-type applied research. Or National Endowment for the Arts. We don't do any art programming. But wait, here's an example of an NEA grant that may not seem like a natural fit for cooperative extension, but if you look deeper, this program aims to align arts programming at the community level, tying it into economic development, which is certainly a complement to our community development programming. Or how about this opportunity from NOAA that supports STEM education? This annual competition is scheduled to open again this fall. Project budgets can be between $250,000 and $500,000 and can fund up to 5 years. USDA is usually a go-to for cooperative extension grants, but here's an opportunity for CEOEL, BANI, or co-op, or all 3 in partnership with one another. This one may look deceiving because there's telemedicine in the title, but if you look a little further, you'll see that there are 2 distinct grant opportunities here. One is an effort to expand telemedicine to rural areas, and the other is expanding distance education to rural areas. So how do you find grants like this? If you haven't done so, I would recommend signing up for OES's Grants Contracts listserv. I especially like the weekly bulletin from GRC that Suzanne sends out. It's a nice roundup of grant opportunities, usually broken up by interest area. Though, because some grants bridge cross disciplines, that NEA grant as an example, this shouldn't be your sole mechanism for searching for grant opportunities. Both of the databases we subscribe to allow you to set up custom email alerts. This is a really great feature. But it is good to note here that if you cast too narrow of a net, you will miss out on some of those opportunities, like that NEA one. But if you cast out too far of a net, you'll have so many opportunities you have to filter through, you won't know what to do with yourself. So that's why my final suggestion is to contact me at the Funding Hub. When someone asks me for help finding funding, I have a conversation with them about what they are looking to fund. I then do a preliminary search for funding opportunities and then follow up with them as new funding opportunities are announced. I try as hard as I can to forecast opportunities, so PDs, the project directors, have as long as possible to prepare their grant proposal. To do that, I keep up to date on funding trends and news. You may have heard that the new administration released its fiscal year 18 budget blueprint last week. As predicted, almost all federal agencies, with the exception of Department of Defense, saw a decrease in funding. The good news for grant seekers here at Extension is that even Republicans in Congress call this budget dead on arrival. The bad news, though, of course, is that there's still a lot of uncertainty, and it's likely that some grant programs will see a decrease in funding or be cut entirely. We just don't know which ones. For UW Extension purposes, a quick overview of the budget blueprint includes complete elimination of the EGA program, most NOAA funding, and complete elimination of NEA, NEH, and the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. In addition, it slashes EPA's budget. But again, this is just a proposal. If Trump's first budget proposal is any indication, most of these programs should be safe, albeit with possibly modified smaller budgets. Over at the SBA, the budget blueprint does propose to cut $12 million through eliminating grant programs where they determine that the private sector provides effective mechanisms to foster local business development and investment. However, the blueprint does propose to increase funding for SBDCs that focus on veterans issues. At the DHHS, the blueprint proposes a pretty robust reorganization of NIH and would cut some of the administration for community living opportunities. The blueprint does show an increased focus on addressing the opioid epidemic, which is something that USDA NIFA funding has recently focused on as well. And there's also an increased focus on chronic disease management resources, as well as addressing the needs of an aging population. Over at the USDA, prior to the release of the budget blueprint, the newly confirmed Secretary, Sonny Perdue, announced a reorganization of USDA's trading policies, signaling an increased interest in supporting international agricultural trade. But his proposal also included the elimination of the Undersecretary for Rural Development, which signaled a reduction of the emphasis on these grant programs. Trump's proposal for the USDA did not cut as much as most observers were predicting, which is good news. In a quote taken directly from the blueprint, Trump's budget continues to support farmer-focused research and extension partnerships at land-grant universities and provides about $350 million for USDA's flagship competitive research program, otherwise known as AFRE. This budget proposal does target a lot of rural development programs at the USDA, among them the Value-Added Producer Grant Program, Appropriate Technology Transfer for Rural Areas, and the Rural Cooperative Development Grants. It also proposes deep cuts to the Community Facilities Program and Rural Water and Wastewater Program. In addition to targeting rural development, the budget request also includes over $100 million in cuts to NIFA, including a 44% cut to NIFA's integrated activities. Here's a quick breakdown for you of what within NIFA is proposing to be cut. And then here's a nice chart to show you exactly what I'm talking about here. So there's the elimination of Farm Safety and Agribility Program, Renewable Resources Extension Act, Rural Health and Safety Program, a decrease in funding for SARE and the Higher Ed Challenge Program, but then sustaining levels of support for Smith-Lever, AFRE, which includes Childhood Obesity Prevention Challenge Area, the Education and Literacy Initiative, and Sustainable Bioenergy and Bioproducts Challenge Area. In addition, the proposal sustains funding for food safety outreach, expanded food and nutrition education program, and CFAR, And surprisingly, the proposal increases funding for beginning farmer and rancher development, organic research and extension initiative, and food and security nutrition incentive program. But again, all of this is just a proposal. We don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. Grant programs for fiscal year 17 are still in place, and as you can see here for your NEA, all agencies will continue to operate as usual until any decisions are made. It's a very long budget process. What can we do next? Use your funding email alerts, databases, or contact me for help finding funding. Once you think you have a possible funding opportunity, check out the toolbox on the Hub's website. On there, there's a funding analysis tool that can help you determine if this opportunity is right for you. In addition, I have a sample grant calendar that you can use to organize various opportunities as you come across them. The example on the website includes opportunities for family living programs, but it also can customize to fit your needs. Another really great tool on the site is the proposal enhancement tool. It's a pretty robust document that is helpful for everyone on your team once you are ready to prepare your proposal. It helps you define your audience, determine appropriate collaborators, and project anticipated impact costs. Here's where you can find all that information. You go into the toolbox, scroll down into finding funding, and there you will find the fillable funding analysis worksheet. And go back to the toolbox, click on Grant Tracking Form, which pulls up an Excel spreadsheet where you can input your own grant opportunities as you come across them so that you can stay current on what's out there, and then into that proposal enhancement tool, which again is a robust 18-page document where you fill out the worksheets as you go along with your team to help determine, what exactly your program is going to do, who the audience is, who your stakeholders are, who to collaborate with. Here are just some general tips to help you in the proposal development process. Develop partnerships. Developing partnerships can be difficult and take a great deal of time. You should know that the most innovative and successful grant proposals are collaborative efforts. Often that means you need to put the time and effort into developing these partnerships. A collaboration within Extension, with other universities or nonprofit agencies and other government organizations can enhance a grant proposal with a great deal. And in some cases, a partnership is required, or many partnerships are required. Communicate with the program officer. This information is usually readily available on the agency's website or right within the RFA. The role of the program officer is different in every situation, even sometimes within the same agency. In some situations, program officers facilitate the grant process. In others, they may serve as your advocate in the decision process. In still other cases, they make final decisions on funding. The one major advantage these people have in every situation is that they know more about that particular grant program than anybody else. It's their baby. You need to tap this wealth of information. It can help you plan your interaction with a program officer. And here's a quick tip. If you do ever want to start communicating with a program officer, put your idea down on paper in a paragraph or two. Program officers often prefer email for first contact, and a short, clear description of your idea helps them and you to get in front of the right person. Be flexible. Proposal development is not an exact science. No matter how far in advance you start preparing your proposal, things are going to change, be rushed, not work out, fall apart. Computers will crash, people won't respond to your phone calls, someone may get upset, you're going to get nervous about making the deadline, and your email won't work. This is okay, should be expected, and one more reason to plan ahead and work with OES. Be open to feedback. Constructive criticism can be helpful. Turn to your peers in your department and ask them to read a draft of your proposal. Send one on to the Funding Resource Hub before you're ready to get OES involved. Be happy to take a look at your documents to make sure that it's easily readable by somebody without expertise in that field. By receiving feedback from more experienced grant writers, you'll be able to improve the quality of your proposal. Be confident. Seeking a grant can be a humbling experience. You need to have confidence in your ideas, in yourself, and in UW Extension. Remember, grant writing is an iterative process. sponsors can have more good ideas than they can fund at any given time. Your odds of success do increase over time and as you get more experience with the grant writing process. Start now. The process of accruing a grant can be very lengthy. In some cases, the turnaround time from submission to a notice is 7 to 8 months. If you're not successful on your first attempt, and this is an annual competition, there's another 4 months until the next deadline, then another 7 to 8 months until you're notified again. If you feel you don't have the time now, odds are good you won't have the time a year from now. Talk to your colleagues. There's probably someone here at UW Extension who knows something about this grant program and has experience and insight that can help you. Review for programs that interest you. Perhaps the best way to improve your proposal writing is to serve as a peer reviewer. Many agencies are in chronic need of qualified reviewers. There's no better way to understand what makes a competitive proposal than to review for one. Contact a program officer in a program of interest to you and see what their process for selecting reviewers is. A peer review can take 2 to 3 days of your time, but will pay great dividends in your own grant writing. Work with OES. Get to know us, get to know the hub. Come see us, call us, stop by, drop us a line. We're on the first floor of the UW Extension building. We're here to help you. And finally, persevere. You are your best resource and your best advocate. The first grant is always the most difficult, but it gets easier after that. Don't take failure personally. Failures not only provide learning experiences, in this business, they also provide some feedback to use the next time around. As you're preparing your proposal, here's just a sprinkling of helpful departments within Extension that should be your first contact when you're preparing your proposal. The Applied Research Lab can help you determine exactly who your audience is and who your stakeholders are. They can help you prepare that impact statement with information on what the demographics are for your intended service area. Within Wisconsin Public Television, there is a production service that you can use to help produce videos and edit them. Their services come complete with a production van so you can capture high quality videos right from the field. And then within Cooperative Extension, there's the Program Development and Evaluation team. They can help you with your logic model and creating an evaluation plan, which is something that every single grant proposal requires. And lastly, I just wanted to touch on a quick story from a fellow UW System Grant Administrator that I met recently. He's from UW Whitewater, and he had recently located back to Wisconsin from Montana. He was very excited when he heard that I was from Extension because he had recently helped a team from Whitewater prepare an NSF proposal. NSF has lately become much more interested in funding projects with compelling outreach and dissemination components. The team preparing this grant at Whitewater had a real struggle coming up with a good way to disseminate their results for local impact. In hindsight, this grant administrator had wished that he had contacted somebody at Extension in one of the counties that Whitewater works in for their help in disseminating their information. Here's a really great opportunity for county agents, particularly those with a college or university located in them. With a greater emphasis on local impact and dissemination, UW Extension is well poised to continue expounding the Wisconsin idea. Thanks again for tuning in. Here, of course, is my contact information if you ever want to reach out to me for anything in the proposal development field. I would love to hear from you. Thanks.